It's over. I want a divorce. My wife handed me a folder expecting me to beg in tears. But I just said, your choice. A month later, she lost it when she saw me happy with another woman. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I discovered something even better, living well while your ex-wife watches from the sidelines. When Isabel handed me the divorce papers, she expected tears and pleading. Instead, I smiled. I said, fine by me, and disappeared into the woods with a secret that would change everything. What she found when she tracked me down months later, let's just say the cabin wasn't empty and the woman sharing my table was not who anyone expected. My name is Lester Coleman. People call me Les. I'm 64 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I've been married to Isabel for 41 years. We raised 2 kids who turned out pretty decent, and I built a business that put food on the table and a roof over our heads. I was never one for luxuries, but we had what we needed. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I was sitting at our old oak kitchen table, the same one we bought at a garage sale back when Clint was president, drinking my black coffee and reading the sports section. Isabel came in wearing that blue cardigan I had bought her last Christmas, the one she said made her look frumpy. She poured herself a tea, which should have been my first clue since she had been a coffee drinker for decades. She sat across from me, folded her hands as if she were about to pray, and looked me straight in the eye. Les, Isabel said, her voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. It's over. I want a divorce. Now, I've lived long enough to know when someone has rehearsed their lines. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was calculated, planned, probably discussed with her book club friends over wine and cheese. I put down the paper, took a long sip of coffee, and nodded. Fine by me, I said. The look on her face was worth $1 million. She had come armed for war, ready for tears, begging, and maybe some old-fashioned pleading. Instead, I gave her the same response I would if she had asked me to pick up milk on the way home. Isabel blinked hard, as if someone had just turned on a bright light in a dark room. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope of papers. I've prepared everything, she said, sliding it across the table. The division of assets, the house, your business accounts. I think you'll find it fair. I picked up the envelope, felt its weight, and put it back down without opening it. I'm sure I will, I said. You were always good with numbers. She stood up then, smoothing her skirt as if she were going to a job interview instead of ending a marriage. That's it? Isabel asked. No questions, no fight. I stood up too, rinsed my coffee mug in the sink, and dried it with a dish towel hanging from the oven handle. What is there to fight about, ICI? You made your decision. I'm respecting it. The way her mouth opened and closed reminded me of a fish gasping out of water. She expected drama. Maybe she needed it to justify what she was about to do. Instead, I gave her exactly what she had asked for, freedom. 3 hours after Isabel left that morning, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, staring at that envelope as if it might grow legs and walk away. The coffee had gone cold, but I didn't bother making a new pot. It seemed pointless to start new routines when everything else was ending. Around noon, my phone started buzzing. First it was Brianne, my daughter. Dad, Mom called me, Brianne said without even a hello. She told me what happened. Are you okay? I could hear the kids in the background, my 7- and 9-year-old grandkids, arguing over some triviality as kids do. I'm fine, sweetie, I told her. Just going over some paperwork. Dad, you don't have to pretend with me. This is huge. 41 years of marriage don't just end over breakfast. She was right, of course. But what was I supposed to tell her? That I had seen it coming for months? That her mother had been slowly pulling away like someone easing out of a parking space? Sometimes things just run their course, Bree, like an old engine that finally wears out. 20 minutes later, Cody called. My 38-year-old son, and he still thinks he can fix everything with the right words. Dad, what the hell happened? Cody asked. Mom's at my place crying into a box of tissues saying, you didn't even fight for the marriage. I walked out to the garage where my old Chevy truck was waiting for its next oil change. I had been working on engines for 40 years, and they made sense. You could diagnose problems, replace worn parts, make things run smoothly again. Marriages weren't that simple. Your mother made her decision, son. It wasn't my place to argue with it. But Dad, don't you care? Don't you want to try therapy or something? I ran my hand over the truck's fender, feeling the small dents and scratches that told stories of 4 decades of honest work. Cody, when the foundation shifts, you can prop it up temporarily, but eventually the whole structure is compromised. Your mother and I have been on shaky ground for years. There was silence on the other end. My boy was a software engineer. He dealt in logic and code. This kind of human messiness didn't compute for him. I just don't get how you can be so calm about this, Cody said finally. Because fighting won't change anything, and dignity matters more than drama. After I hung up, I opened that envelope. Isabel had been thorough, I'll give her that. She had calculated everything down to the last dollar. The house would be sold, the profits split 50/50ths, my business accounts, my tools, even my fishing gear, all itemized like a warehouse inventory. But there was one thing she had missed, something that made me smile for the first time that day. Buried in all that legal paperwork was a clause about undisclosed assets. Isabel had always handled our finances, managed our investments, balanced the books. What she didn't know was that I had been quietly setting money aside for years, just in case. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I called in sick to my own business. Well, not sick exactly, but I told Bobby Utechkins, my shop foreman, that he was in charge for the day. Bobby had been with me for 15 years. He knew every bolt and gasket in that place better than some men know their own wives. You okay, Les? Bobby asked. You sound different. Just need to take care of some personal business, I said. Think you can handle Mrs. Patterson's transmission without burning the place down? Bobby laughed. I'll try to keep the explosions to a minimum. After hanging up, I walked through the house one last time. Isabel had been meticulous in her planning. She had already moved most of her personal things to her sister's house over the past few weeks. I just hadn't been paying attention. The closet was half empty. The bathroom counter, cleared of her perfume bottles and face creams. I loaded my truck with everything I cared about. My toolbox, a duffel bag of clothes, my fishing gear, and a cardboard box of photos of the kids and my late father. The rest of it, the furniture, the decorative nonsense, the kitchen gadgets we never used, none of it meant anything without her there to fuss over it. My first stop was the bank. I had been thinking all night about that hidden account, the one Isabel didn't know about. It turned out old Al Simons, who taught me the auto repair trade 40 years ago, had given me more than just business skills. He taught me that a man should always have a rainy day fund, money that no one else knew about, not even family. Just in case life throws you a curveball, Al used to say. And believe me, kid, life's got a hell of a fastball, and it's not afraid to put one right between your eyes. The balance in that account was enough to start over somewhere. It wasn't rich man's money, but it was enough for a down payment on a small place and a couple of years of living expenses. I had been adding to it slowly, 20 or 30 at a time from cash jobs at the shop. My next stop was Riverside Realty. I had seen the for sale signs around, but one property in particular had caught my eye, a small cabin about 15 miles out of town, right on Miller's Creek. The ad said it needed work, which was fine by me. I had spent my life fixing things other people had given up on. Jennifer Walls, the real estate agent, was surprised to see me. Les Coleman, Jennifer said, shaking my hand. Haven't seen you since you fixed my husband's truck last spring. What brings you in? I want to buy that cabin on Miller's Creek, the one that's been sitting empty for 6 months. Her eyebrows shot up. That's a big change from your place in town. Everything okay with you and Isabel? Small towns don't keep secrets for long. By nightfall, everyone would know about the divorce. Anyway, sometimes a man needs a fresh start, I said. How soon can we see it? The cabin was everything the ad promised and nothing I expected. Jennifer wasn't kidding when she said it needed work. The front porch sagged like the shoulders of a tired old man, and the roof had more patches than a quilt, but it was on 3 acres of Miller's Creek and the building's structure was solid. The previous owner was a widower, Jennifer explained as we walked through the small living room. After his wife passed, he just couldn't keep up with the maintenance. The family wants to sell it as is. The place had 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen that looked like it was from the 70s. But the living room had a stone fireplace that would throw good heat, and the main bedroom had windows that faced east towards the creek. I could already picture myself drinking coffee there in the mornings, watching the sun rise over the water. What's your bottom line? I asked Jennifer. She told me a price that was $30,000 less than what I had in that secret account. I'll take it, I said. Cash offer. No need for inspections. Jennifer looked at me like I had just started speaking Chinese. Les, you might want to think about it. Have a contractor check the foundation, check the wiring, make sure the well water is clean. Jennifer, I've been fixing things my whole life. I know what I'm looking at. The paperwork took 2 hours. Jennifer kept asking if I wanted to call Isabel to make sure she was okay with the purchase. I told her Isabel was no longer part of the decision-making process. By sunset, I was the owner of a rundown cabin that most people would have bulldozed for the land value. But standing on that sagging porch, looking out at the creek with a beer in my hand, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Cody. Dad, Mom is telling everyone you lost your mind and bought a shack in the woods. Please tell me it's not true. I replied, it's true, and it's the smartest thing I've done in 20 years. Then I turned my phone off and listened to the creek flow by my property. Tomorrow I would start fixing this place up, making it my own. Tonight I was just going to sit here and remember what it felt like to make decisions without asking for permission. The quiet was broken by the sound of a truck coming up the gravel driveway. I figured it was probably Jennifer coming back to check that I hadn't had some kind of mental breakdown. Instead, it was an old Ford truck, older than mine, with a woman behind the wheel. She parked next to my truck and got out. Tall, lean, with a streak of silver in her brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She was wearing jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt like she actually used them for work. You the new owner? She asked, walking up to the porch. Les Coleman, I said, getting up and extending my hand. Raina Mia, she said, giving me a firm handshake. I live about a mile up the river. Just wanted to introduce myself and welcome you to the neighborhood. Raina, Michigan turned out to be the kind of neighbor I had forgotten existed, the kind who shows up with practical help instead of empty compliments. The morning after I moved into the cabin, she appeared at my door with a thermos of coffee and a toolbox. Figured you could use an extra pair of hands, Raina said, setting the thermos on my makeshift kitchen counter. That front porch isn't going to fix itself. I had spent the night on an air mattress, listening to the creek and making mental notes of everything that needed attention. The porch was definitely priority number one. It wouldn't hold much more weight. You don't have to do that, I told her. I can handle it. I'm sure you can, but 4 hands work faster than 2, and I don't have anything pressing today. She wasn't kidding about knowing her way around tools. While I was measuring and marking the support beams that needed replacing, Raina started prying up the rotted porch boards with the kind of efficiency that comes from years of practice. Do you do this kind of work professionally? I asked, impressed by her technique. Retired Air Force, Raina said, prying up another board. I spent 25 years maintaining aircraft. Buildings aren't that different. Keep the structure sound, and everything else falls into place. We worked in a comfortable silence for most of the morning. No small talk, no personal questions, just 2 people focused on getting a job done right. By lunch, we had replaced half the porch boards and reinforced the support posts. There's a diner in town that makes decent burgers, Raina said, wiping sawdust from her hands. My treat, since you provided the entertainment. Over lunch, I learned that Raina had bought her place 3 years ago after retiring from the military. She had been married once, briefly, to another airman who couldn't handle being married to a woman who outranked him. Some men can't get past their ego, Raina said, sipping her iced tea. They want a woman who needs them, not one who can take care of herself. Sounds familiar, I said, thinking of Isabel's complaints over the years. That I was too set in my ways, too independent, too comfortable with silence. And you? Raina asked. Divorce, I'm guessing, since you're starting fresh out here. 41 years, I said. She decided she wanted something different. Raina nodded as if she completely understood. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a person is for someone else to make the hard decision for them. That afternoon we finished the porch. As the sun set, Raina gathered her tools and headed for her truck. Same time tomorrow? She asked. That kitchen window frame needs attention before winter. You don't have to keep helping, I said. I know I don't have to. I want to. After she left, I sat on my newly repaired porch with a beer, watching the creek flow. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about what went wrong in my marriage. I was thinking about what could go right and what came next. News travels fast in small towns, especially when it involves someone people thought they knew. By the end of my first week at the cabin, Isabel had apparently heard about my range from at least 3 different sources. She called me on a Thursday night, while I was replacing the kitchen faucet. Les, people are saying you're living with some woman out there, Isabel said without even a hello. People say a lot of things, ICI. That doesn't make them true. So, you're not seeing anyone. I put down my wrench and looked out the window at Raina's truck parked in my driveway. She was inside making dinner. Nothing fancy, just grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup while I finished the plumbing. I'm seeing whoever I want to see, I said. That's generally what happens when you get divorced. We're not divorced yet. The papers haven't been finalized. Semantics, you wanted out. You got out. What I do now is none of your business. There was silence on the other end. Then the sound of Isabel crying. Not the angry tears she used to shed during our arguments, but something softer, more broken. I didn't think you'd move on so fast, Isabel said. 41 years should count for something. It does. It counts as 41 years of me trying to be someone I'm not. After I hung up, I found Raina setting plates on my small dining table. She had heard enough of the conversation to figure out what was happening. Ex-wife, Raina asked. Soon to be. She's having second thoughts about whether I should be allowed to have a life after her. That's not how divorce works, Raina said, handing me a sandwich. She doesn't get to keep you on a shelf for emergencies. The next morning, Cody showed up unannounced. I was outside splitting firewood when his BMW pulled into the driveway, looking as out of place as a tuxedo at a barbecue. Dad, we need to talk, Cody said, getting out of his car and looking around as if he had landed on an alien planet. Come on in. I'll make you some coffee, I said, sinking the axe into another log. I'll be done here in a few minutes. I'm serious, Dad. Mom called me last night in tears. She says you're living with some stranger and acting like your marriage never existed. I put down the axe and looked at my son. 38 years old, successful, well-meaning, but still thinking like someone who's never had his heart broken. Your mother filed for divorce, Cody. She ended the marriage, not me. But Dad, don't you think you're moving a little fast? It's only been a month. Son, your mother and I stopped being married emotionally years ago. The paperwork just made it official. Cody looked frustrated, like he was trying to solve a math problem with missing variables. What about therapy and trying to fix things? What about accepting that sometimes things end and that's not always a tragedy? Before Cody could answer, Raina's truck pulled into the driveway, parked next to his BMW, and she got out carrying a grocery bag and wearing her usual work clothes. Morning, Les, Raina said, and then she nodded politely at Cody. You must be one of the boys. I'm Raina. Cody shook her hand automatically, but I could see him sizing her up. Her firm handshake, her direct eye contact, the way she carried herself like someone who had never needed anyone's permission to exist. Nice to meet you, Cody said, though his tone suggested otherwise. After Raina went inside, Cody turned back to me with a mixture of confusion and concern. Dad, she seems different from Mom. That's the point, son. 2 months into my new life at the cabin, Isabel decided to pay me an unannounced visit. I was replacing the kitchen window when her silver Lexus pulled up the gravel driveway. Through the new glass, I watched her park and sit in the car for a full minute, probably gathering the courage to knock. Raina was at the stove making her famous chili for dinner. We had fallen into an easy routine. She'd come over after her morning run. We would work on whatever project needed attention, and usually she would stay for dinner. Nothing had been officially discussed, but her overnight bag was showing up with increasing frequency. Expecting company? Raina asked, looking out the window. Ex-wife? I said, putting down my tools. This is going to be interesting. Isabel finally got out of the car, wearing a blue dress I bought her for our anniversary 3 years ago. She walked to the front door as if she were approaching a firing squad. I opened the door before she could knock. Isabel, I said, I didn't know you were coming. I tried to call, she said, not looking me directly in the eye. You didn't answer. I've been busy. What can I do for you? She looked past me into the cabin, taking in the renovated interior, the warm lighting, the smell of dinner cooking. Her gaze landed on Raina, who was stirring the chili and pretending not to listen. Could we talk in private? Isabel asked. This is my home, I said. Raina is welcome to hear whatever you have to say. Isabel's jaw tightened. Fine. I came to tell you I've been thinking about our situation. Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we should try therapy. I leaned against the doorframe, studying the woman I had been married to for 41 years. She seemed smaller somehow, less certain than the woman who had handed me divorce papers 2 months ago. What made you change your mind? I asked. I've missed you, Isabel said, her voice cracking slightly. I've missed us. The house feels empty without you. The house felt empty with me too. That was the problem. Reina turned from the stove, wiping her hands on a dish towel. I'll give you two some privacy, she said, heading for the door. Stay, I told her without taking my eyes off Isabel. This won't take long. Isabel's face flushed. Les, I'm trying to save our marriage. The least you could do is hear me out. I heard you out 2 months ago when you filed for divorce. You made your decision. People can change their minds. Some can, some can't. Isabel looked around the cabin again. The stone fireplace I had repaired, the new kitchen counters I had installed, the dining table where Reina had set 2 places for dinner. This isn't you, Les, Isabel said, living in a shack in the woods playing house with some stranger. This isn't who you are. You're right, I said. This is who I am when no one is telling me who I should be. Isabel started to cry then. Not the angry tears from our old arguments, but something desperate and broken. 41 years has to count for something, she said. It does. It counts as 41 years of learning that we want different things. After Isabel left, I found Reina on the back deck looking out at the creek. She had heard everything, of course. Are you okay? I asked her. Should I be worried? Reina asked. About her trying to get you back. I sat next to her on the steps I had built last week. There's nothing to get back, I told her. That man she was married to doesn't exist anymore. The chest pain started on a Tuesday morning while I was splitting firewood. At first I thought it was just a pulled muscle. I wasn't 20 anymore, and swinging an axe for 2 hours straight was bound to take its toll. But when the pain didn't let up after lunch, and when I started feeling lightheaded while fixing the cabin's gutters, I knew something was wrong. Reina found me sitting on the porch steps, breathing hard and sweating despite the cool October air. What's wrong? She asked, dropping her toolbox and kneeling beside me. Probably nothing, I said. Just winded. Les, you're grayer than old concrete. We're going to the hospital. I wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes told me it wasn't up for debate. 25 years in the Air Force had taught her to recognize when someone was in real trouble. The ER doctor was younger than my son Cody, but he knew his stuff. After an EKG, blood work, and a chest x-ray, he sat down with a serious expression. Mr. Coleman, you've had what we call a minor cardiac event. Not a full-blown heart attack, but your heart is definitely sending you a message. What kind of message? Reina asked. She had insisted on staying with me through all the tests. The kind that says, slow down before something worse happens, the doctor said. Your cholesterol is through the roof, your blood pressure is elevated, and there's evidence of arterial blockage. How long has it been since your last checkup? I couldn't remember. Isabel used to nag me about doctor's appointments, but after she stopped caring about my health, I stopped thinking about it too. We need to do more tests, the doctor said. Stress test, echocardiogram, probably a cardiac catheterization, and you're going to have to make some lifestyle changes immediately. They kept me overnight for observation. Reina stayed in the chair by my bed, even though I told her she didn't have to. Where else would I be? She asked. The next morning, Cody and Brian showed up, looking worried and guilty. Apparently, Reina had called them after the doctor's initial diagnosis. Dad, why didn't you tell us you weren't feeling well? Brian asked, taking my hand. I didn't want to worry anyone, I said. Besides, I feel fine now. You feel fine because you're medicated, Cody said. The doctor says you could have died if Reina hadn't brought you in. I looked over at Reina, who was sitting quietly in the corner. She had probably saved my life, and I had just been thinking about how embarrassing it was to be seen as weak. Thank you, I told her. Don't thank me yet, Reina said. Wait until you see what I'm going to put you through to keep you healthy. Later that afternoon, while Cody and Brian were talking to the doctor about my discharge instructions, I asked Reina something that had been bothering me. Why are you here? I said, we've known each other for 2 months. You don't owe me anything. Reina was quiet for a long moment, looking out the hospital window at the parking lot below. 28 years ago, I was married to a pilot named Jack Mishi, she said. Good man, decorated veteran. Never met a problem he couldn't solve himself. One day, he started having chest pains. He told me it was nothing, probably just stress from his deployment schedule. 3 weeks later, he had a massive heart attack in the cockpit of an F-16. He was killed instantly. She turned to look at me, her eyes fierce and determined. I'm here because I'm not going through that again. Not if I can help it. Recovering from a heart scare changes a man's priorities real fast. The cardiologist put me on a strict regimen. Medication twice a day, a low-sodium diet, 30 minutes of walking every morning, and stress reduction techniques that sounded like something Isabel would have suggested years ago. Raina took charge of my recovery like a drill sergeant with a medical degree. She threw out all the processed food from my kitchen, filled the fridge with vegetables I couldn't pronounce, and bought a blood pressure cuff she used on me twice a day. "This isn't negotiable," she said when I complained about the bland grilled chicken she made for dinner. "If you want to live long enough to enjoy this place, you eat what's good for you." 3 weeks into my new routine, Cody brought his family to visit the cabin. My grandkids, Emma and Jack, ran around the property like loose puppies, fishing in the creek and building forts in the woods. Watching them explore, I realized this was what I had been missing all those years in the city. Room to breathe, space to think, permission to just exist. "Dad, you look better than you have in years," Brianne said, helping Raina set out lunch. "I was worried when Mom told us about the divorce. But this place is good for you. Your father has always been happiest when he's working with his hands," Raina said, seasoning the grilled fish we had caught that morning. "He just needed the space to remember who he is." That evening, after the family went home, I sat on the deck with Raina, watching the creek flow by our property. Yes, our property. Sometime between the heart attack and the recovery, she had stopped going back to her place up the river. "Raina," I said, "I need to tell you something." She looked at me with concern. "Your chest isn't hurting again, is it?" "No, nothing like that. I need to tell you about Al Simons, the man who taught me the auto repair business. He gave me a piece of advice once that I never forgot." "What kind of advice?" He said, "A man should always have a rainy day fund. But more importantly, he needs to know when he's found something worth sticking around for." Raina smiled. The kind of smile that reaches all the way to her eyes. "And have you found something worth sticking around for?" I took her hand, feeling the calluses from years of honest work, the strength that had probably saved my life. "I found someone worth changing for," I said. "Worth getting healthier for. Worth being better for." 6 months later, Raina moved in permanently. We sold her place upriver and used the money to add a workshop where I could do small engine repairs for the locals. The business wasn't about making money. My pension and the settlement from Isabel kept us comfortable. It was about having a purpose, staying busy, keeping my hands occupied with useful work. Isabel remarried a year later to a retired insurance salesman who appreciated her organizational skills and didn't mind being managed. Cody told me they seemed happy together, which was fine by me. Everyone deserves to find their place. 2 years after I moved to the cabin, I received a call that changed everything. It was from a lawyer in Denver telling me that Al Simons had passed away and had left me something in his will. Al had been like a father to me after my own dad died young. He taught me everything about fixing engines, running a business, and treating customers with respect. What I didn't know was that he had been watching my life from a distance, keeping track of how things turned out. "Mr. Coleman," the lawyer said, "Mr. Simons left you his entire estate, his house, his savings, and his classic car collection. He said you were the son he never had. The inheritance was substantial, enough to secure our future completely and leave something significant for my grandkids. But more than the money, it was AL's letter that moved me. Les, the letter read, if you're reading this, it means you finally understood what I tried to teach you 40 years ago. A man's worth isn't measured by what he accumulates, but by what he's willing to walk away from when it no longer serves him. I heard about your divorce and your new life. Proud of you for finally putting yourself first. Raina found me sitting on the deck that night, reading AL's letter for the 3rd time. Everything okay? She asked, sitting in the chair next to me. More than okay, I said, handing her the letter. It's like he gave me permission to be happy. You didn't need his permission for that. Maybe not, but it helps to know someone was paying attention. That fall, Cody brought some troubling news. His marriage was falling apart, and he was dealing with the same issues I had faced, feeling trapped, unappreciated, slowly dying inside a relationship that had stopped being a partnership. What should I do, Dad? He asked during one of his weekend visits. I thought about AL's advice, about the rainy day fund, about knowing when you've found something worth staying for. Son, only you can answer that. But I'll tell you what I learned. Life is too short to spend it pretending to be someone you're not. 6 months later, Cody filed for divorce. It was messy and expensive, but he came out of it with his dignity intact and a clearer idea of what he wanted from life. The grandkids visit every other weekend. Emma is learning how to fish now, and Jack is already talking about building his own cabin someday. Raina teaches them practical skills: how to change a tire, how to read a map, how to build a fire without matches. Why do we need to know this stuff? Emma asked during their last visit. Because self-sufficiency is the foundation of freedom, Raina told her. You can't control what life throws at you, but you can control how prepared you are to meet it. Looking back, I realized that the divorce Isabel filed for was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Not because our marriage was terrible, but because it forced me to become the man I was meant to be, instead of the man I thought I was supposed to be. Some people spend their whole lives trying to fix what's broken. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is walk away and build something new. Al knew it. Raina knows it. And finally, at 66 years old, so do I.